What's a low-effort job with a surprisingly high salary? Story 1. I knew a guy who was a transmitter operator at a high-power UHF TV station. He drove up to their remote facility in the mountains, turned it on in the morning, got up every 3 hours to check the meter readings, turned it off at night, and drove home. The rest of the time up there was his to read or study. There was a bunk room there if he got snowed in. I did the math once and determined that if you divided his pay by the time he actually did any work, it came to 280 hours. Story 2. This is going to be very dependent on the person and what they teach. But for me, tutoring, I have a part-time job while studying, but I also like to tutor on the side, and my starting usually goes for about $35 an hour. I teach English, which for me comes very easily, hence why I'd say it really depends on the person. Story 3. Granted, he had been with the company for about 20 years, but a coworker at the Delta Sky Club who worked the front desk made about $150K a year. If you don't know, the Delta Sky Club is just an airport lounge for first-class people where they can sit around and eat a little from the buffet and have a drink before the flight. The front desk employees were the only ones who actually worked for Delta Airlines, and all they did was check their membership when they came in. The airport I worked in was also so slow. But yeah, apparently Delta is a great company to work for, and the employees are compensated very well. Story 4. I worked as an office manager for a major IT security company in Sydney. I was in charge of reception, hardly anyone came to the door, keeping the kitchen stocked, and generally day-to-day admin and finance stuff, paying bills, mail, fixing stuff. I got paid $60K a year to do fudge, all because they didn't want their high-paid sales folks wasting time doing office admin when they could be brokering $100K or $1 million deals. I spent most of my time in the kitchen sorting it out. We had free breakfast, cereal, toast, fruit, coffee machine, and free soft drinks and adult beverage, beer and wine. I'd spend a good hour of my day just making a fresh fruit salad for the 60 people in the office just because I had absolutely nothing to do. My manager was based in India, so when there was work to be done, Story 5. Call center management, not even something high up like operations or quality assurance, even being middle management can be lucrative. I've worked a few call center jobs. The people on the bottom absolutely get fudge overworked, stressed out. But once you get to management, it's fudge easy. Last call center job I worked, I got promoted to management just due to how long I had been there. After the promotion, I was paid $50K per year to sit at home, listen to people do their fill out paperwork, and have the occasional web meeting. I spent more time playing video games and working out than anything else while on the clock. Funniest part to me is that when I gave my notice, they tried to offer me a promotion to stay because I was such a hard worker. I was super tempted to laugh and tell them how little work I actually did in a day. Oh, the classic call center manager glow up, from being overworked and underpaid to being paid to literally watch other people work. It's like getting a promotion for mastering the art of looking busy, and then they try to promote you again when you quit. That's not a job, that's a subscription service for warm chairs and passive income. Honestly, if capitalism had a mascot, it'd be this guy playing video games while his team handles the actual meltdowns. Story 6. Movie critic. Half the critics don't have good tastes and are paid off by the studios to say nice things. Story 7. Speaking as a preschool teacher who cares deeply about a job that gets me barely above the poverty line, this thread is crushingly depressing. Story 8. It's near impossible to get some of the lazy AF teachers at my school fired because of the ridiculously powerful union. Several SOBs are making well over 120, zero doing jack shoot all day. To be clear, I'm also a teacher. Our union is too fudge powerful. Shoot teachers need to be able to be fired. Also, I'm in NYC. Story 9. Bioinformatics. You're literally being paid to find ways to do less actual lab work and let the computers do the science instead. Answer, it's so funny. I read the same things and got into it in holy Jesus, sweet mother of God. It is the most frustrating thing I've ever done. At least that's how it is when I'm using the Linux terminal to run some bioinformatic programs. So many errors every time I have to do an alignment or make a tree. I've been trying to get this program to align my sequences for the past few days. Well, it just doesn't work. Please tell me it gets better. Story 10. Voice engineer. However, it does take years and years of hard work to get here. Honestly, I have the most chill job and make over 100, so. Story 11. Power plant operator. Sure, you study for your licenses and your instructional training, or JITs. Other than that, when the boiler and turbines are operating properly, you just babysit it. Outages are a different story, but reality, how many outages a year? Most of the time, you sit around chilling like a villain in a Batman movie. Story 12. Over the course of my many careers, I can confidently say that there's an inverse relationship between how taxing my work has been and how much I've gotten paid. The most gut-wrenching, physical and emotionally intensive labor was lowest paying. The highest paying was chilling out on some meetings and making comments every now and then on spreadsheets. Answer, my experience has been different. I've had many jobs: bartender, server, retail, kennel person, lifeguard, receptionist, etc. I'm now a veterinarian. It is by far the most difficult job. The amount of pressure and how many people depend on you is extremely taxing. And yes, I get paid more, but my debt-to-income ratio isn't great. But I really miss my carefree bartending, retail, server days sometimes. Story 13. Industrial maintenance. Most jobs nowadays are mostly computer work, and that is if you're working at all. The degrees for these jobs cost 10-0, and you can get an entry-level position for 60-0. Story 14. IT work for the state I work in. Once a week, we drive a company car to another site, replace a workstation or two, and then stay the night and check in on it the next day. Hit 40 hours early and 4-day weekend. Edit, thank you for all the upvotes. Just got done with a deployment, and I work 2 hours tomorrow, then essentially a 4-day weekend again. Story 15. Fractionation operator. Only HS degree. I have made over 6 figures the last 3 years. I have subscriptions to every streaming service BC. Basically, all I do at work is watch series and movies, especially on midnights. Sometimes we get busy, but for the most part, it's super boring and just chilling out. We have a turnaround next week that will last 2 weeks, and we will have to do actual work, which will suck. But other than that, it's just browsing the internet and watching Netflix. Story 16. I make 6 figures annually in less than 8 hours a day as a commercial driver. Literally anyone could do this job. Story 17. I'm quite discomforted by how little money I made working late-night bars for years compared to what I do now. Producing videos for a tech company. There needs to be serious minimum wage reform because it's disproportionate as hell. Story 18. Train guard. In Sydney, my mate dropped out in year 10. Went on to be a Macca's manager for 2 years, applied for the position at 19, got in, and after a month of training, he gets paid 90 grand a year to sit on a train and make surely everyone gets on and off safely. Story 19. As a facilities manager, I don't do a lot of work and I get a decent pay, but I am not paid for the work. I am paid for the safety and responsibility of the building and the lives within it. Story 20. I got lucky to get this job, but an assistant stationary engineer at a university has been a godsend for me. I'm only an assistant, but the pay is decent, 15-ish. The benefits working for the state is awesome. Healthcare plus pension, but I hear every single place has great benefits for this job. And the job where I'm at is super simple. All I do 95 of the time is just take readings on chillers and boilers to make sure they are running properly. Since I have to walk around a bit, it's good little exercise, but spend the rest of like 4 or 5 hours doing my own thing. I'm lucky enough to go back to school, and since the school has scholarships for employees, it comes out a bit cheaper. Once you get enough experience, you can go for licenses 3RD to UNES grade that can let you get a lead role. Pay is little in the state, but can go 30 in private sector, and depending where you live, you are working with boilers like with a 2-story boiler. If that thing blows, them gone, so that's why they give good pay and benefits everywhere. It's seriously a great job, and as long you're safe and smart, it's an incredible investment to try and get into. Sorry this is super long, but I can't express enough how this job can be a life changer, especially if you get in young. So let me get this straight. Your job is to make sure giant metal containers of boiling water and explosive pressure don't explode. And for that, you get paid to walk around, take notes, and then spend 4 hours doing whatever you want. That's not a job description. That's the plot of a movie where the hero accidentally saves the world while scrolling through memes. Assistant stationary engineer sounds like someone who helps pencils not move. But no, it's actually a life-changing career where your main skill is not dying. Sign me up. Story 21. Management. You're basically paid to make sure that other people are working. The higher you go, the more your job is to send emails like, "Keep up the good work, fam." Story 22. If you can create the right software as a service business, it's basically free money. I licensed out a software I wrote to 2 large franchises and basically get paid $15K a month to stay home and ensure it's running 247. Story 23. Another vote for IT with an asterisk. If you play it right, you can get a lifetime position with great salary and benefits in easy work that you presumably enjoy. Alternately, you can end up a help desk drone making minimum wage and hating life. SLG, state local clout, educational institutions, as others have mentioned, and the occasional unicorn privately owned niche company are great places to target. Don't get entrenched. Story 24. School board members. Don't know about other places, but school board members at my school, public school, made well over €5 a month, well above the average. All the board ever did was create shoot rules and then remove them. They always acted so darn busy when everyone knew they drank coffee while surfing Facebook the entire day. A school member's husband even said that, so you know it's true. Story 25. I play video games all day and spend an hour a week doing maintenance. I operate a satellite antenna. 35 60 weeks the norm, but 84 occasionally. Story 26. My next-door neighbor works in a power station. His job is to sit in front of a monitor and make sure everything is working well. If something goes wrong, he calls the appropriate workstation and they fix the problem. Because an alarm sounds if something is out of sync, which rarely happens. He is able to play games or read a book 99 of the time. He is on 150 per hour to basically play games and chill at work. Story 27. IT manager at a university. The techs know their jobs, their users, and manage their own schedules and workloads among themselves. Managers basically just have to rubber stamp time cards, confirm parts orders, and make sure the techs don't all take vacations at the same time. Answer. Honestly, almost any IT position at a school is cake. Almost half of our IT department doesn't even have a degree. And the ones that do have it, it's in cybersecurity. They mail body part around with a few Chromebooks or iPads and watch YouTube most of the day. I envy them. I bust my jerk for $17 an hour, cleaning the school, and most of them are making $23, changing out the occasional ink cartridge and hiding in their office, looking busy. Lowell Fudge cool guys, though, we shoot the shoot for like an hour a day, just talking about anime. What we did to our project cars over the weekend, a few of them helped me get into crypto. I'm hoping to see some decent returns, maybe help pay for some night classes so I don't have to clean toilets anymore. Story 28. The president. We all know the cabinet and vice president do legwork. The president just gives the okay. Not a bad gig for 400 Kier. Story 29. Everyone in this thread needs to read David Graeber's book, Bullshit Jobs. It's an extremely insightful look into how many office jobs that don't really accomplish any meaningful work came to be and how this has affected our society. Can't recommend it enough. Story 30. I work in a warehouse for a prison. Pay starts at $20 an hour and work is generally not too hard. The facility I was at before definitely involved more work, but it was also twice the size in population. Story 31. Truck driver. Seriously look into it. There is a huge demand for truck drivers right now, and I'm not talking the Amazon delivery guys. You can even get a local route and work regular work hours and make a lot of money for having the skill of driving. Answer. As a truck driver, it's much more than just the skill of driving. You have to have constant situational awareness, mental focus, and maneuvering skills to place your truck where it needs to be when making a delivery or arriving at a shipper. You also need to be able to properly maintain appropriate gears when climbing and descending mountains or hills, make appropriate use of the engine brakes to avoid burning up your brakes, and doing a pre-trip on well over 100 different points on the truck and trailer. Truck driving also utilizes trip planning skills from using a GPS roadmap and knowing where you can and can't stop for a 30-minute break, 10-hour reset. It's a lot more work than it looks on the outside. Story 32. I'm a manager for a call center at a medical device company, and let me tell you, I am not paid enough for the workload I have. Story 33. Any job I have is low effort. Edit. I'm a commissioning engineer for power stations. BTO pays good, and I spend a lot of time waiting for things to warm up or cool down while I drink tea. Story 34. Ticket takers on a train. In my neck of the woods, they get amazing pay, benefits, and OT opportunities to walk up and down the trains and punch scan tickets. And they still want more. Every few years, there's a new scandal about overtime or disability fraud. It's ridiculous. Answer. My mom works in the station selling tickets. The pay isn't that spectacular, and there was a fair bit of training involved and exams to learn to use the ticket machine, but the job itself is fairly low effort. That being said, she mostly disliked it because people just yell at her through the glass all day about their train being delayed as if she is the controller of all trains. Story 35. Tour guiding. I'm a water tour guide in Hawaii. I make 4 times what the average person my age makes. Half the time I'm chilling in the water or on the boat. The other half I'm a lifeguard, information dude, and boat flight attendant in LOL. Thank you, tourists. Story 36. I'm not sure if this is applicable nationwide, but I do know that here in Oregon, flagging is a seriously good-paying job. You need about 3 hours of training, and then you're out holding stop signs for any sort of road work. My job paid 18 HR, which is quite a bit for an 18-year-old, and if the crew you were assigned to had prevailing wage, you would also make that amount, 23 an hour in my case. My problem with it was that it's too easy. Your job is to stand still and pay attention, sometimes 8 or 9 hours without break. I'm a patient person, but after 6 months of it, I had to quit simply because I'm a social person. Story 37. Are there any toll booth operators anymore? I remember years ago they made excellent salary and had pensions and benefits that adequately drained my state's finances. Story 38. Real estate appraisal. I work 30-ish hours a week and make, on average, about $150 an hour without a degree. Story 39. May not be popular, but every programmer friend of mine works an hour or 2 a day and is making almost triple figures, plays games all day, responds to a bug or project every few hours. I picked the wrong career field. Story 40. Get an MBA you can spend the rest of your career telling people what to do and not do. Belittle them every chance you get, fly business class, and develop you network at cocktail parties. And when one of your underlings does something nice, you can turn around and claim it as yours. Story 41. This whole thread just goes to show, if all the employers were less obsessed with people looking busy and more concerned with shoot getting done, would all be home by 3 p.m. and making decent money. Story 42. Mobile notary that does home signings. They can line up 4-7 appointments in a day and make $200-300 per. One of the absolute best weekend gigs. In some markets, you can pay your rent by working 1 extra Saturday a month. Story 43. International pilot. I make $200 a year as a wide-body first officer. None of the decisions fall to me. I fly 1 leg to Europe. I get a couple-hour nap on each leg. I get 24-48 hours in a cool city. Then I fly 1 leg home, couple-hour nap again on the way home. When I'm home, there is nothing I could conceivably do for work, so I just get to enjoy my many, many days off. Don't get me wrong, the training was intense, but man, my job now is stupid easy. Answer. Aren't you being paid for when something goes wrong, though? Like my family doctor when I was a kid was paid well, and all he did was check my ears, look at my throat, and listen to my breathing when I was sick, and write a prescription for the penicillin for the ear infection I had. But if it was much worse than that, that's where he really does the work. Story 44. Vanna White's job on Wheel of Fortune. She gets paid $4 million a year walking back and forth in an area of 20 feet. Story 45. Some of the people, public and private sectors, in this thread lolling about how little work they have to do when in reality there are other people being driven to an early grave by those people not doing their GD jobs either because others' work is held up or made more difficult than necessary as a direct result. On the other hand, being really good at one's job and achieving the ability to produce significantly more than most does in fact result in lower effort that still produces outstanding results. Basically, get good enough at many jobs and the effort is reduced while still making a good living and not screwing over other people by not doing one's part, especially when the difference may be a customer who needlessly suffers, for example, in a healthcare setting. Story 46. Some kinds of writer, 99. 9 of novelists, poets, and playwrights make sucky money. People who do technical writing earn more but not enough given the time and expertise needed. But it's also possible to crap out content in certain fields. I'm looking at you, health and fitness, self-development, and positive psychology, at 100 per hour, no specialist knowledge, originality, or talent required. Story 47. Certain graphic design jobs. I work about 20 hours a week, but since I'm salaried, I make the full amount, 54. 3 a year, or roughly 26-25 an hour. It's not an insanely high amount by any means, but for the amount of time I spend working, it's pretty darn good, in my opinion. Story 48. Supervising, in my experience. I'm so bored and unsatisfied, but I'd take a pay cut to go back to hourly. Story 49. If you're young, 18, and a student, check out security. We don't do shoot, get paid over minimum wage, and no prior experience with anything required. Allied Universal will literally hire anybody. If you're a student, you can watch lectures, study, and do homework. If not, then you can just chill and watch YouTube or Netflix or browse Reddit. I'm at work right now. Chillest job ever with 20 her wages. Story 50. Radiological control technician. 85 base 100 if you work 1 weekend a month and plenty earn 150. I'm making 45 an hour right now browsing Reddit, and all I have for work today is 1 hour of tours. That's my workload. Doesn't really change. Story 51. Commodities broker. You invest other people's money, and regardless of the outcome, you still make money. Story 52. Honestly, I'd rather you work me to the bone than sit there all day waiting for the day to be over. But fudge work all the same. Story 53. Doesn't really matter how physically easy your job is. They are really paying for your time, because you can't get that time back ever. Story 54. Mine. I work in a commercial construction sales. I spend my days whining and dining my clients. Golf and fancy lunches, dinners, trips, happy hours, etc. All on company dime, and this is encouraged. Our best reps spend the most money each month, so if I am not spending enough money, it means I am not interacting with clients enough. I maybe work 20 hours a week. They pay me a base of 85 commission, company car, 8,400 1K match, great health care. I very much enjoy my job. Story 55. Buy assets that make you cash money every month. Avoid liabilities that cost you money. Build up enough assets and you don't need a job. Story 56. Middle management. You just annoy everyone all day long and really do fudge all to affect the outcome of work. Story 57. Sorry I have to say, but thank God for coronavirus. I'm in finance and I don't do shoot now, that everything is remote and is staying remote. At most, I work about 2-4 hours each day, and then I got bored and picked up a second full-time remote finance job. I'm making close to 200 now, doing about 4-7 hours of work each day, not including any overtime full-time remote. Story 58. Art collecting trading. If you can collect enough to begin with, and you know what you're doing, it's very simple to buy great artists early, wait for prices to rise, sell a bunch at auction, which is very low effort, then reinvest the money and do it all again. You can spend some profits while making more. I know a guy that does this where he can raise almost $1 million just like that. Story 59. So I'm seeing a lot of PPL say government jobs. If all y'all are on Reddit, no wonder why it takes forever to get anything done. How do I go about getting a job in Joab? Story 60. I'd say every high salary job is a low effort one. It is a long-standing rule of capitalism that the harder, grueling, or unsatisfying is the job, the lower is the pay. Rarely ever even a salary position. Story 61. Software engineering. I honestly think everyone can do it with relatively low effort. It's easier than basic math and pretty low effort. Story 62. London Underground tube driver. 35K training, salary for 16 weeks, then 55, 36 an hour overtime. Retire at 50 on full pension. By then could be on as much as 100. Union is also mega powerful. While you have to concentrate for long periods, and it can be kind of lonely. While it sounds daunting in terms of responsibility, there's tons of safety procedures and equipment. Only issue with landing a job is that they almost never go external to transport for London, TfL. Story 63. Software work at a large but not super large software company. Uber, Indeed, Reddit, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. They all need the best, but they can't pay what FANG pays. Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. So they have to offer awesome benefits in WLB instead. Not uncommon for a 25-year-old to be making 250 here with 4 weeks vacation working 30 hours a week. Also not uncommon for a 40-year-old to be making 400 here with the same benefits. Source. This is my industry. Story 64. I work as an English language instructor. Basically, I teach English to non-English speakers, so most if not all classes consist of only spoken English and some grammar work. Here's the funny thing. I completely forgot everything about grammar and still don't know shoot. Yesterday, I had to look up examples on third person singular because I forget what that was. My job consists of reading notes I wrote for myself during my online classes. I reached a point where I wrote a script for myself, so I pretend that I know what I am doing in class, LOL. I read those notes 90 of the time in class. The pay is quite good, and the overtime pay is insane. I had to double check my contact for it, as the overtime is more than my own base salary. To put it in perspective, 3 months worth of overtime allowed me to pay for my brother's MA degree fully. And the overtime is calculated differently in this job. So normal working hours would be only 4 hours per day. Overtime would be another 4 hours of teaching, which adds up to 8 hours per day. And that would be the normal working hours. I give my students a lot of breaks, so I'm technically teaching 6 to 7 hours only, haha. I've taken on so many classes per day because all I get to do is sit at home and read my notes to my students on Zoom. Plus, I made it so that it's 80 them doing language practices with themselves, so I don't do any work. I also scroll through Reddit or play video games in the background. So far, no one can tell. Also, as horrible and lazy as I sound, the notes and lessons that I wrote are actually quite effective. I actually spent a lot of time developing them and making them good so that I don't have to bother much with my supervisor. For some reason, I also got a raise today. I'm really starting to question my job. Edit. For the people asking where and how, I'm not comfortable saying the name of the company, but it's a language center that starts with the letter B. As for how, here's the thing. It's a little bit tricky. So in this company, the way they pay their employees is based on how many classes they teach per month. However, due to the labor laws in my country, that's illegal. All employees must have a fixed base salary, so it's different from one country to another based on labor laws. So combine the fact that this company has to pay me a minimum salary with their system of paying me per class results into me getting paid more. Now, why would they do that? Why not stick to the minimum and call it a day? Because of their own rules of paying per class is called units, but I'll stick with the class as it's easier. So in my contract, it says that I should get paid a minimum salary due to labor laws. So the company said, okay, sure, we'll just calculate it into the same way we do things and give this person X amount of classes that translates into his base salary. However, what they didn't calculate is the lack of time we have to finish the classes and the massive amount of material that we need to cover every month, plus the fact that we're understaffed. All of this translates into me reaching my minimum amount of classes in just a week and a half. And then for the remaining 2 weeks and a half, all the work I'm doing is considered as overtime, thus paying me more. Their system is so broken, lol. This is not a job, it's a legal loophole with a Zoom account. You teach English without knowing grammar, read from a script you wrote yourself, and get paid insane overtime because the company's own system is broken? That's not teaching. That's a heist, and you're the mastermind. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. This person hacked the education industrial complex and came out with a paycheck that funded a whole degree. If this were a movie, the sequel would be called How to Get Paid to Watch Netflix While Nodding on Camera. Story 65. Made $55 an hour supporting an American system during graveyard hours. I was literally the only person in one of 3 huge buildings, all dark except for my lowly office. For the first few nights, security would come around to see why the light were on all night. I received no calls nor emails ever at any time. This lasted for 4 or 5 months. I slept most of the time and, of course, got myself banned from subreddits. Story 66. Public school building engineers. 75 to change fluorescent light ballasts and call an electrician or plumber or janitor when needed. No actual engineering skills or education required. It's just a title. You're a janitor that doesn't clean. Source, a bitter janitor who can't even get a darn interview for building engineer. Story 67. I am what is called a medical physicist. I work a pretty clean 9-5 plus, like one Saturday a month, and make about 200. Story 68. I wouldn't say low effort exactly. I write curriculum, answer a lot of emails and texts, and deal with reschedules. And I work with quite a few students with ADHD and other learning disabilities. But I charge $100 a lesson as an SATAC tutor, and for the most part, I really enjoy what I do. I get to sleep in, I make my own schedule, and I don't have to answer to a shoot boss. Aside from lifeguarding as a teenager, it's my favorite job I've ever had. Story 69. A lot of people look for low-effort jobs. What you want is a job you enjoy that gives you a sense of purpose, then the effort becomes worth it. Text me if you find something like that so I can join. Story 70. Not saying this is universally the case, but working as a home appraiser for a bank or a property assessor for a government can be a very highly paid very little gig. Story 71. Half of these comments are jobs where literally one person on earth actually does it, and the other 49 are just complaining about politicians and executives. Story 72. Naming movies. The guy who names movies at Pixar, he makes over $700K a year. Guess which movie he got a $300K bonus from? Cars. Yeah. Story 73. Enterprise SaaS sales. Amazing job. Manage your own workload schedule, stellar benefits, expense cards, infinite job security, and great people. Typically pays $300K per year. $200K is considered the low end. A lot of people are scared off by the sales aspect of it, but selling to technology to large businesses isn't very salesy at all. Story 74. A girl I dated was a pharmaceutical rep. She made over 100 base plus bonuses and was done with work by noon almost every day. Story 75. Reinsurance underwriting. No one knows what it is, and almost all your work is done in 5 months out of the year. Story 76. May get down votes for this, but all I've realized is working for the government is a very, very, very easy job. Story 77. Cannabis delivery. I work in the industry. Our couriers can make $25-30 an hour doing deliveries with tips and mileages and minimum wage. Story 78. IT support for a small company. Basically, you will be using Windows Troubleshooter for 90 of your time. Then you might do some networking or server stuff, mainly maintenance. When shoot actually hits the fan, you can say, wow, this one is tough. I might need some help and hire a third party. In other words, it's kind of like helping your dad with his PC stuff. Don't get me started on working from home or video conference setups recently. Story 79. I work maybe 15 hours a week most weeks and get paid $125 with unlimited PTO, insurance premiums paid, and a $45,400 ONEC match. What hours I do work are almost zero effort or difficult tasks. The secret is that after 7 years of working in a niche, high turnover field, I'm the most knowledgeable person, and they wanted to retain me to help and train others that turn over every 2-3 years on average. Because of this turnover rate, almost no one makes it to the experience level required to replace me. I have so much free time that I bought a 25 share of a small manufacturing business, started managing ordering and shipping, if most of the products, about 2 hours a week, and make an additional $45K a year at that. I probably play more Minecraft than actual work recently. Story 80. I had a job like this. I got paid $28 an hour working as an administrative assistant in a high school. It takes like 15 minutes to input grades and send truancy letters. Answering phone calls always resorts to just transferring them to the principal or school nurse. Literally nothing to do. I left the job because there's no work in the summer. School is closed. And honestly, the environment was toxic. When you have that much free time at work, people want to start talking about their personal lives, and I don't like to talk about mine to my toxic coworkers. So I left. This job was the definition of money doesn't buy happiness. Story 81. Congressman. 3 months of vacation. Shoot ton of money from companies if you pass laws favoring them. A base minimum pay of $180K a year too. Answer. Oh boy, this is so painfully wrong. There are not just so many great books on what being a congressperson is actually like, even day-to-day details. But so many post-college grads who love poli-sci go into entry-level congressional jobs and can attest to how fudge brutal being a politician is. I'm not asking you to feel bad for them at all, but it is not easy. Some examples. 1. A congressperson needs to have 2 homes, one in their district state and one in extremely expensive Washington, D.C. Sure, a famous congressperson is rich on their own, but there are definitely true stories out there of poorer congresspeople from smaller districts having to sleep on an office couch for half the year because they can't afford 2 rents or 2 mortgages. Shoot is seriously not unheard of. 2, you are constantly thinking about re-election. Elections are fudge insane. There is a reason that why most people in politics had money before they ran for election, because it's insanely expensive before you even start getting paid. You have massive staff, always have to have your smiling face up, can never be real for even 5 fudge minutes because it'll get torn apart on Reddit. Browse your phone for 2 seconds during a boring floor session on something that doesn't matter. The public will vilify you. I'm not saying that's wrong either. I'm just saying you can't even mail body part around for 2 seconds without it being a major risk. Just think about how often most people mail body part around at their jobs. Even back-breaking construction workers can take a few minutes to just fudge around and chill. Speeches, commercials, door-to-door knocking, phone calls, meetings, holy shoot. A congressperson's calendar is literally just filled from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. pretty much nonstop every day. 3. Committees and congressional votes. Do you know how many committees the average congressperson is a part of? Beyond that, do you know how many congressional committees there are in total? There are 20 committees that in total have about 13,020 bills on the docket each year. Think about that. There are literally tens of thousands of laws people want passed each year, and only 2 can make it to a vote on the floor. Why? Because committees do an insane amount of work. It's not uncommon for a congressperson to literally be triple booked at the same time, where they are needed on the House floor for a vote, needed in their special committee for a vote, and then needed for another committee they are on for an entirely different vote. People complain sometimes that they don't read bills. Congress would get even less done if everyone had to read each other's bills. This is why friendship, political parties, subcommittees, and log rolling is a thing. 4. On top of all the federal work you have to do for laws that impact the country, you are also on the hook for all the local politics and shoot that happens in your district. So not only are you focusing on laws about foreign tariffs, budgets for the military, and NASA, etc., but you are also looked at as responsible for shoot that happens in District 9 in North Dakota. Cop shoots a dog, someone calls your office. Kid gets ice cream stolen by a meth head. Someone calls your office, rinse, repeat. You couldn't pay me $500 to take that fudge job, let alone a measly $180 a year. That shoot is way too little. Source: I studied poli-sci and TA'd a simulation of Congress class in college for 2 years and have a bunch of friends who work in Congress. Just read some books about it. It's literally insane and totally puts into perspective a lot of why Congress gets almost nothing done, why there is so much pork and lobbying and shoot, and why the work attracts the kind of people you see in politics. Rich, white, weird, awkward, you name it. Story 82. In Australia, lollipop ladies can earn up to $3 per week for flipping a slow stop sign for traffic at a roadside construction site and just generally existing as eye candy. The boredom, overtime, and risk of passing injury kind of makes up for it. Answer: the typical earnings for that job are grossly overestimated due to a couple articles that went around with 0 sources. I don't doubt there might be a select minority that earn that much, being over award rate and knowing the right people. But generally, it is definitely not the job you want if you want to earn big money. I worked that job for 5 years for multiple companies. My biggest week earned me $2,300 before tax, and it was a horrible, horrible week. I would work, have less than adequate sleep, and then get back to it. Barely had time to shower. Generally, the hours are inconsistent too. I'd earn $1,500 one week, then nothing for the next 2. If you want an easy but well-paying job, this isn't it. Some days were easy, but often it was hot, wet, stressful, or all of them combined. People hurl harmful behavior at you. You nearly get eliminated. If it isn't that, you go mad with boredom. It is not healthy to stand in one spot for hours staring at nothing without stimulation. I will never go back to that job and don't recommend it to anyone. The classic lollipop lady fantasy. Stand around, flip a sign, earn thousands. Except reality is, you stand in one spot for hours, people yell at you, you almost get hit by cars, and your biggest paycheck comes from a week that nearly killed you. So it's not easy money, it's easy boredom with a side of existential dread. This is the universe's way of saying, you want money for doing nothing? Fine, but you'll pay for it in sanity. Story 83. If you're sufficiently experienced and/or educated, you will be paid for knowing where to hit the hammer, not how many times you hit the hammer. Story 84. Driving the massive dump trucks that serve mines. Starting salary is like $70K, and all you do is drive back and forth all day. Answer: I drive a 45-ton occasionally for my work in mass grading. Would you say you have to navigate difficult terrain, i.e., deal with hills, drop-offs, slopes, etc., or are the mine roads just flat? I'm curious because the truck is about half of what I do during the week, and I have to navigate some pretty precarious situations for definitely not $70K a year. Story 85. I worked as a massage model at a massage school. My job was to lay there and be massaged for a few hours while the students did their lessons or took their exams. It was $30 an hour, which isn't loads, but better than the $10 an hour office job I had before. Edit. Just to clarify, this wasn't a full-time job. It was fairly casual, probably between 4 and 10 hours a week, depending on how busy the school was that week, and only for maybe 3 or 4 months. Story 86. I haven't worked as one myself, but I've heard several people say one can make a lot of cash working as a beer cart girl on golf courses. Story 87. Software engineer. I solved someone else's problem today since I had worked on a similar thing before. Felt pretty accomplished and decided to stop working for the day. This was at Tenem. Story 88. When I was backpacking, I signed up to a temp agency in Sydney who would hire well-presented front-of-house staff for corporate firms who like to have a pretty, young, well-dressed thing manning the reception desk whilst their clients came. I often got paid $30-40 an hour to welcome clients, show them to their meeting room, pour some water, and order their catering. And that's all I did, in fancy, beautiful offices overlooking Sydney Harbour Bridge, etc. Once their regular receptionist got back from leave, he'd be popped on to the next one. I did a stint at Sydney University at one of their newly built research centers. All I did was direct people to the lifts in the right part of the building for their meeting. I made enough money doing this to backpack through the entire east coast of Australia over 3 months. Story 89. There are some jobs where you are translating between customers and technical teams. If you can speak to both and are not shy to run a presentation once a week, you productively work under an hour a day and get paid more than anyone else who is doing the actual work. The rest of the day, you browse Reddit. Story 90. My dad is a manager at a company that designs software for various companies, and half the time he just checks his email or is on Facebook or YouTube or something, and the other half of his time is spent running tests on the software. I'm not sure how much he makes exactly, but it's definitely enough to live very comfortably. Story 91. Not exactly low effort, but plumbers electricians can make quite the amount of money having less than 8 work a day. Story 92. Staffing and recruiting, but specifically on the business development or sales side of things. I don't even make sales calls much anymore. It's just repeat clients. They call me up and say, hey, we need a quality manager ASAP. I say, cool. What does it pay, and what are the top 3 things you need to see on a resume? I get that, and then give it to recruiters who spend a week or 2 finding the right person and walking them through the hiring process. I spend 15 minutes on the phone, and a month later I get a fat commission check. Edit. It's easy now. Building a book of business and learning enough about every type of position that exists at every industry to the point where you know what you are talking about and people will trust you was hard. Story 93. Cop. Where I am from, they make 100 annually with very little crime. Money is divested into new toys like helicopters, tanks, even robots. South Central LA. Boy, it is not. Answer. Don't forget the massive pension. Unions have the California politicians by the balls and have no problem making their kids pay for their spending in order to get the union support. CHP officers who retired in 1999 or earlier, after at least 30 years on the job, collected pensions averaging $62,218, according to CalPERS data. For those who retired after 1999, the average pension was $96,270. The average retirement age for CHP officers is 54. Someone that age without a pension who wanted to buy an annuity to generate the same income for life would have to pay more than $2.6 million, according to Fidelity Investments. Story 94. Fed chairman ignore economic data and recommendations. Say the same speech over and over again, every couple months. Give your rich homies free bailout money. Collect paycheck. Story 95. Admin. Admin jobs in my country pays 10 more than a service job. Admin jobs aren't that hard, require little to no thinking, are low-level skilled, and have no physical demands other than eye pain. Story 96. My current job. Project manager for U.S.-based Fortune 200 company, permanent work from home, make 6 figures, and I do maybe 4 hours of actual work each week. I have my home office set up where I have 2 gaming monitors connected to my gaming laptop sitting on my desk directly in front of me. Then I have my work laptop sitting to one side that's got the volume turned up, so I hear if I get an email or message. When I do, I handle that, then go back to my personal laptop. Most days I'm either playing video games, watching movies, browsing Reddit, studying for new certifications, or doing stuff around the house like laundry, dishes, cleaning rooms, food prep, etc. People on my team constantly say things like, man, this workload is insane. I've got the same and even more than some. It's so boring. But they're paying me to mail body part around most days. Answer. Security PM here for a global tech company. Can confirm. My job is to meet with my stakeholders once per month to collect updates on risks and write reports every now and then. 6 figures, and I'm interviewing next week for a position that is 180-200 KR. I was actually having an existential crisis about this last night because I realized how income inequality is so fudge up. My job honestly doesn't matter or benefit society. But teachers and caregivers do, and it's just not fair. I work tanks harder while in retail and customer service than I do now. Story 97. I lived in Salt Lake City in 2002 during the Winter Olympics. Was a sophomore in college, but the school closed down that semester to host the games. Was getting paid 20 hour, very good at the time, to sit in a van in traffic for a good part of the day so I could swap out tablecloths in the private dining rooms of big corporate clients. Schedule was all over the place, but the money was great considering how little work I actually did. Story 98. CEO of virtually any established company. The average days worked for CEOs of larger core was 17 a year last year. Story 99. I had a part-time job when I was a student, many years ago. Essentially, I physically opened the on-campus computer center at 7:30 a.m. and closed it again at 8 p.m. weekdays. I opened it at 9 a.m. weekends and actually had to be on site for 3 hours till it shut at noon. I lived on campus, so it was really no trouble at all, and enforced weekend morning into study time. The kicker was that the minimum time payable was 3 hours per attendance, so 6 hours per day, and time present at weekends, 36 hours a week at 30-hour. Easy money. Story 100. My last job at Microsoft. My manager literally gave me nothing to do. I don't even know why I was there. In 6 months, I did maybe 3 weeks' work. For a while, it was very pleasant, but eventually looking busy gets harder than actually being busy. Then a reorg happened, and suddenly I had a competent manager who was wondering why I existed. No problem. I just had to go get an actual job before my review came up. All in all, a great year. Story 101. Enterprise software sales. Earn $300K a year working from home, closing deals with major core working. 30 HRs a week. Story 102. Bear scare on the pipelines. They just sit in their trucks all day long looking for bears and get paid 65 CAD. Story 103. I work at a bulge bracket investment bank. I don't want to give out too many details, but I get about 2-5 emails a day that I essentially forward to other people to answer the questions. I get paid 100. Story 104. Housekeeper for the dead. I cleaned mausoleums and was paid 200 day in 2002, so good money, working about 12 hours a day on average, and some days as little as 45 minutes. I was contracted in my own business, allowing me to write off so much stuff that I paid next to nothing in taxes. There might have been some questionably legal paperwork here, but occasionally hiring friends for short stints, which made me very popular. This is how I worked my way through college. Story 105. Mattress tester sleeping for a living. Basically, you can work as a tester for mattress companies, and from what my friend who works as one says, he gets paid about $35K a year. Story 106. An old pal of mine delivers expensive boats to customers by simply sailing them from where they were purchased to where the new owner wants. That's not really a job, is it? So whatever he makes is surprisingly high. Story 107. I trade stocks and options for a living. Takes a couple of hours a day, and I make a very healthy income from it. Story 108. I do admin work for the government. My pay is 55K. At best, I get 5 emails a day with about 2 that actually concern me. No BS. My phone has rang about 20 times since June honest. On a super busy day, I have about 45 minutes worth of work to do. Answer, I used to work in government administration, and it is a really great chill place. Things do move at a much slower pace there. I had some issue with my computer, so I just got me a new account with new email and all. What I didn't notice was all my scheduled meetings, etc., was still only on the old account. So when I noticed I hadn't been at any of those weekly meetings for a couple weeks, I figured if they need me, they know where to find me. I was already planning on leaving a couple months after that. No one even asked why I didn't show up to the meeting anymore. It was a perfect workplace. Story 109. Reading these just pisses me off about being in food service, 13 hour, in a high-stress, very active job, 9 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, with maybe a 20-minute break if I can fit it in. Just barely enough to live in my studio apartment by myself. Story 110. I work at a heliport where I just get a couple passengers' bags, put them on the heli, and then go and sit on my phone for however many hours until the heli get back. Rinse and repeat, roughly 70. Story 111. A long time ago, at the beginning of university, I did voiceover for adult content that was in a different language. I usually showed up around midnight after the legit voiceover people had left for the day, did about 4 hours of work, and was paid $35.70 an hour. Most of it was just making different moaning sounds, because apparently sexy moans sound different in different languages. I'm not surprised, TBH. I remember French classes. A cat said something like meow instead of meow. Everyone was totally professional, and after a while, it was just a job I did 2-4 nights a week that paid pretty well. I stopped because the studio was far away, and the more intense school got, the harder it was to manage a night schedule with classes. But honestly, if the chance came up, I'd probably do it again if I needed to save for a vacation or something. Story 112. From what I have observed, running your own self-storage facility, especially if it's one of the ones where you live on site, had a customer, elderly lady, that I regularly talked to that ran one of those joints. She pulled six figures, and all she had to do was handle paperwork, watch cameras, and call the cops if something wasn't right. She lived in an apartment that was upstairs from the office. Story 113. I work in marketing, and honestly, my job is just telling people with suggestions. We will take that under consideration, and the other half is listening to higher-ups saying how we can change our brand. And absolutely nothing happens ever. Due to COVID, I have been working from home and get to Reddit all day, every day, because work decided to block it. Story 114. Pav, you're reading about all these people doing literally nothing and making 100 while you're on your 5-minute McDonald's break that pays $11 an hour. Story 115. Engineering work prep. No shoot? Most days we work like 3 hours. The rest is either Reddit, darts, fooling around with the colleagues, or senseless meetings. Story 116. Friend's dad was an electrician for a Budweiser factory. He told that he loves his job because he gets paid $30 an hour, works 1 hour out of his shift, then sits in the break room for 7 hours playing Clash of Clans. He's been doing that job for 25 years, and he'll probably never retire now that we got him a Nintendo Switch for his birthday. Story 117. Business intelligence data analyst. Do you know how to use Excel? Can you write basically SQL? Are you able to express yourself clearly and deal with getting variations of the same 10 questions for the rest of your career? Congrats. Welcome to Making 100. Story 118. My cousin used to work at a call center, and he told me there were ITs who just sit there and wait until someone has a problem with the computer and fix it. He said it happens so rarely, but the ITs get paid higher than them. Story 119. I'm an airline pilot. After years of training and flying, we can all do the jobs in our sleep. Everything becomes predictable. Only about less than one of the time, the chute hits the fan. Story 120. Worked where school tables are made. My work was to fit together main metal structure and the plastic bottom of the table's legs. Just one hammer hit per table leg. During the night, without a huge prod to do. 1,800 for 2 weeks I worked there. Story 121. SITT. People being paid way too much for doing 15 minutes of work while there are literally thousands in poverty. X200B. Our economic infrastructure is a joke. Story 122. Jenny Oppen film. You literally just watch a generator and get paid more than most people working on the film set. Story 123. Solar sales. Just have a few conversations with homeowners, go over proposals for them, and then sign like 3 pieces of paperwork. Our project management team takes care of most of the work after that. Easily make about 2 a sale. Made 11 sales last month, and it's my 12th month in the industry. Already on track to easily make 120 this year. I have an English degree. Life is good. I also love this job because I'm actually helping people save thousands of dollars and the environment. The industry is booming, and I give it a decade before almost half American homes are solar powered. We're in about 40 states too, so if you're interested in going solar for your home, shoot me a message. Answer. This is a door-to-door sales job. It is generally true with these jobs that commissions are high, but they are contracting jobs with zero base pay. Hence, if you don't make sales, you get nothing, even if you work 100-hour weeks. I've worked in door-to-door sales for 5 years myself, and solar is the newest trend, but I have yet to see someone have much success with it. I have a cousin that sold phones, cars, etc., and hasn't closed a single solar contract in 4 months of full-time trying. If you want to get into this, it's too difficult unless you're already familiar with the home sales industry. Other common products include pest control, security smart home systems, cable, etc., all of which are easier than solar and yield much higher rates of sale. Story 124. I work as a psychiatric aide in youth forensic mental health. Day shift is mostly supervising the kids in their classrooms at hospital school. The odd will have open custody so they can go for walks on the grounds. On evenings, they go to gym, so I just work out with a few of them. They eat dinner, then do an hour of homework, then get 2 hours of free time to watch TV or play ping pong or something like that. Then we take them outside for fresh air for 30 minutes. Then they all lock up and do hygiene one at a time and go to bed. Night shifts, they're all locked up, so I only got to do rounds and mark if they're awake or asleep. It pays $25 an hour, and that's without the premiums of working nights, evenings, or weekends. Story 125. Programmers that manage to automate most of their work after a year, then spend their remaining time in Reddit, occasionally searching Google for answers to programming issues. Story 126. Exam proctoring. You can find listing for test proctors all over the internet. They usually pay anywhere between $15-22, and all you do is sit for a few hours and watch people take tests. Story 127. I got paid $80 a year to install software and run virus and spyware scans while I surfed the net in my own, albeit tiny office. Story 128. I did dedicated tech support in the late 90s. I worked the overnight shift. We each got an average of 6 calls a night. Since most dedicated internet connections were owned by businesses, and most businesses aren't doing much between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. The calls we got were invariably easy, and my average call length was under 4 minutes. I actually worked less than a half hour a night. This is what would happen every call. The internet is down. Any other issue needs to speak to a different department. I'll tell them who to call and when. I ask the IP address of their router. About half of calls, they don't know what I'm talking about. I tell them to have their network admin call. End of call, half will know the IP. I do a trace route to their router. If I get there, the problem is not our connection. End of call. If I can't reach their IP, I look at where the trace ends. Unless it ends on a router with a specific kind of name, less than 10 of the calls, I look up that router on a spreadsheet that tells which network engineer is responsible for that router. I email them the problem, tell the customer we are working on it, end of call. Sometimes the customer has ADSL. This was pretty uncommon, and there's more to those calls. I telnet into the router the trace stopped at and flip the connection. This usually fixes the problem. If it doesn't, I email the engineer, end of call. I made $67K a year doing this. Adjusted for inflation, $110K. Easiest job I ever had and the best paying. I was also single and living in an apartment that cost $265 a month, all bills paid, and drove a 10-year-old pickup. Now I make about $32K a year, pay $800 a month rent, and that doesn't include electricity. I also support a 15-year-old daughter. This isn't a job, it's a time capsule from the 90s where the internet was mysterious and tech support meant sending one email and calling it a night. 67 grand a year to tell people, turn it off and on again while living in a $265 apartment? That's not a salary, that's a life hack. Fast forward to today, and the same person makes less, pays more rent, and has a teenager. That's not inflation. That's a plot twist nobody wanted. If nostalgia hurt, this story would be a weapon. Story 129. Depends on where you live, but in my neck of the woods, firefighters get paid 6 figures and spend most of their time chilling. Of course, when you're called to work, you really got to work, and you don't get to just leave work to go home when your shift is over when shoot goes down. Story 130. I'm a funeral director. I get more than $50K a year before taxes, and all I do is stand at the door and greet people and occasionally show them where the bathroom is. Answer: calling bullshit on this one. My friend's dad is a funeral director, and he works more than anyone I know, and he also makes way more than $50K, probably closer to $200 judging by their house. He has to maintain the day-to-day affairs of the funeral home, such as new intakes, handling the budget, being present for all funerals to make sure things run smoothly, advertising. Story 131. Digital marketing. There is huge demand, very low requirements for entry. Jobs are now usually remote, and the career progression is fantastic. Anyone with a gaming mindset can do well in this field. Story 132. Junior employee in communications, especially in the nonprofit or startup sector. If you have a feel for communications, you can do many jobs with that description with your eyes closed. I filled in pre-made by the senior employee Canva templates and rewrote the things written by the CEO who was too intelligent to wipe his own jerk. He could not possibly string together a normal sentence. I did maybe 3 hours of that type of simple work a day. Story 133. CBP officer. Once you are off the line, you can browse Reddit and YouTube all day for $100K or base. Have friends in other .gov jobs, and I hear the same from them. Story 134. All this thread has done is convince me even further that people who work for the federal government are usually way overpaid. Story 135. With this market, the internet, services like Zillow, it's real estate sales. They are still charging a huge fee for what? Posting on Zillow? Things have changed drastically over the past 5 years, and rarely are people hauled by car to look at a lot of houses. They buy sight unseen. Crazy. I'm going to put my house on the market and sell on my own, or pay one like if I use Zillow. Story 136. I'm an admin at a state university. I'm new and do not affiliated as the country's civil worker. I don't know the proper English term, so my salary is under minimum wage. However, other coworkers who are civil workers got paid 4-5 times bigger than me, plus tons of additional aid salary. Oh my, I add, we have the same job desks. The job desks? Honestly, it's depend on the semester. On the beginning, middle, and end of semester, it's real busy. Other than that, very slow days. Checking students' attendance, finishing report, or answering students' administrative questions. Heck, I saw my coworker who shared the same office room with me came to work at 8:39 and left at 1 p.m. Often she spent the days on the office pantry, cooking and gossiping. I understand why civil workers got bad reputation in my country, slacking off workers, yet humongous salary. Sometimes I dislike coming to this university for work because the salary is very unfair. We have the same job desks, yet vastly different in salary erg. But I'm still young. Job is hard to find in this economy. At the very least, with the extra time I have, I'm able to spare time for graduate school. And in this university job, I'm able to build relations with professors, experts in academia. Sorry for the long rant. Story 137. Not my experience across the board by any means, but I'm a paralegal, and I used to work for an attorney who literally expected me to do her entire job for her, and I would just hand her the finished product on her way into the courtroom so she could argue in front of the judge. I was getting paid 30 in salary, while she paid herself around 8 per year as an attorney, and she also collected rent on the building the law firm was in, so I guess owner of a small law firm. Story 138. Install Infinite Ore Mod, start mining, and just go to sleep. You'll have 1,000 gold ore pieces in the middle of the night. Craft the hell out of the rings and get your smithing to 100 3 times in a row. If you go with iron, it's also helping with alteration skill. Story 139. Federal prison guards. I was at a federal prison camp, i.e. minimum security. Most of the guards made north of 100, and the inmates did 99 of the work. Many guards literally slept at their posts. Story 140. Believe it or not, jobs usually pay what they do for a reason. You might be able to point out a particular instance of somebody having very little work to do and still drawing a high salary, but there is a reason that the role itself pays that sort of salary, regardless of the workload of any individual within that role. Further, effort is not the only determining factor for salary. Digging ditches takes an incredible amount of physical effort, but makes far less than most white-collar jobs. Most of the high-salary jobs that you can point to as being low effort are going to have their own drawbacks or requirements that drive the salary up so high. Usually this takes the form of rare knowledge or ultimate responsibility for making calls and living or dying by how correct those calls are. So you could find yourself in a low-effort job, making a high salary, but still sweating every day from the stress of wondering if you made a bad call and might lose it all. Answer: further, effort is not the only determining factor for salary. Digging ditches takes an incredible amount of physical effort, but makes far less than most white-collar jobs. I would even go further and say effort has almost no bearing on pay. Additionally, I would say how much a job pays has only partial bearing on your skills and abilities, but at least half of it is the least a business thinks it can pay for your labor. That's the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you're interested, I have a second channel. This is Vancher signing off. See you soon.